More than 100 companies, including the likes of Google, Adidas, and UPS, have signed a pledge to fight anti-Semitism in their workplaces as the war in the Middle East intensifies. The Anti-Defamation League, known as ADL, has pooled resources and educational material for companies to follow, as well as creating an urgent appeal to call out violence and hate. Organization's Chief Impact Officer and Senior Vice President Adam Neufeld joins us now. Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Adam, so you're asking businesses to sign on to this workplace pledge to fight anti-Semitism. What exactly does this pledge ask these companies to do, Adam, and what's the response been like so far?
It requires companies to take 4 common sense steps, and some of them have already taken it, some will take it over the next year. First, it means they need to teach about anti-Semitism as part of their DEI program. We found in our surveys that most companies now have DEI programs, but anti-Semitism in the Jewish experience is lost in there. Second, it asks people to support Jewish employees in the way that they support other minority groups. Sometimes that's in employee resource groups, sometimes that's an affinity group, sometimes that's just programming. Third is we find that even still in 2023, companies still are not consistently doing well when it comes to religious observances for Jews, for Muslims, and many other groups. So we want them to reassess. And then finally, we want them to use their bully pulpit. Most companies nowadays speak out on lots of issues. Anti-Semitism can't be exempt. We found that this was already moving quickly, and after the horrible massacre of just a few weeks ago, we've seen companies really step up. We're now at over 100 companies, as you mentioned, and it's growing by the day.
Adam, it's very interesting to me that part of this pledge, 3 of the 4 are internal elements, right? That they are more about supporting employees and DEI initiatives. The last item, though, probably gets more attention than all of the others, I feel like, as of late, as there is enormous pressure on companies and all kinds of institutions to make these types of statements. Do you think that, where do companies need to speak out on everything now? What is the role of the corporation in American or global public life that they have to make a statement on not just this important issue, but on almost every political issue? Where's the line, if there is any?
It's a great question. Our view as ADL is you don't have to speak out as a company. Every company has a different use of their voice, and that's okay. But our view is if you are speaking out on hundreds of issues, from climate change to anti-Black racism, anti-Semitism can't be exempt. And so that's our real message here. If you're silent on all those issues, we understand companies who do that. That's okay. But if you're going to speak out, make sure anti-Semitism and Jews are part of that.
And Adam, I want to switch gears here and talk about another issue, which is what we see going on college campuses. Adam, you know this. You're watching institutions like Harvard, like Penn. They are dealing with backlash. They're dealing with donor revolt. You have alumni upset about how these institutions responded and reacted to the Hamas attacks. They're upset about the environment that the Jewish students at these institutions find themselves in. I'm just curious, Adam, how you and the ADL are thinking about that issue.
Sure. We've been working on anti-Semitism on campus for decades. And have become increasingly concerned. But I have to just admit that after October 7th and the response on campuses were even more disappointing for people who follow it. The immediate celebration by certain groups, again, a small minority, but a really vocal minority, combined with administrators often not losing their voice and not speaking up. We are definitely seeing university presidents speak up, but still too many are not. And I think it's a really important contrast to what we're seeing from CEOs. Again, not every CEO is doing everything we want, but we're seeing, per earlier comments, a lot better. But we're very concerned and working with many concerned alumni to try to get universities to address the small but incredibly vocal minority in their midst that is celebrating unbelievable amounts of terrorism.
Now, Adam, just as I asked the question before about where the line lies for corporate America, there's an important question about where the line lies on college campuses, not just with this issue, but in recent years, we've seen a lot of discussion of certain groups not being welcome on campus to speak on certain issues. So how does this then play into free speech and how you keep students safe on campus while at the same time allowing dissenting opinions.
I should be clear, we have no problem with vociferous debate around Israel, around Middle East, or any other issue, right? That is what college is about, as you're suggesting, and what society needs. We're firm believers in freedom of speech. But what we've seen is something far worse than that. We've seen groups that are celebrating terrorism, and the rest of society or the rest of the school is often shrugging or being silent about that, right? In that, we would not tolerate that if that was a neo-Nazi group on campus, and we shouldn't tolerate that if it is a group that wants the destruction of Israel. So we think that if a university can take lots of steps and still let students and faculty and others have difficult conversations that they should be having in campus.
And Adam, just a final question here about the demographics that I think is interesting. I would love to get your take on this. When you look at polling on this issue, Harvard-Harris poll, for example, shows Americans still overwhelmingly support Israel, more than 80%. But the demographic breakdown there is interesting because it's really stark, Adam. So broken down by age, 95% of seniors said they side with Israel, according to Harvard-Harris. But when you look at the 18 to 24 demographic, it drops sharply to 52%. I'm interested to understand, get your viewpoint, Adam. What do you think that is? What do you think explains that?
It's a trend that we've been watching and are unbelievably concerned about. We think part of it is depending on when you grew up and learned about foreign policy, Israel means different things to you. It's also, I think, a sense that for a very misguided view of Israel is through the colonial world, right? That this is some colonial power, and you hear things like that, and you see it in the signs, as opposed to the scrappy startup that was created right after the Holocaust that many older people did. And so we're worried about that, which is why I think you're seeing some of what's happening on campus.
ADL Chief Impact Officer and Senior Vice President Adam Neufeld. Thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you so much for having me.